It always starts the same way, not with a scream or a shadow rushing at you, but with a moment so small and quiet that your brain immediately tries to explain it away. Because that's what our minds are designed to do, protect us from fear by turning the unexplainable into something ordinary. Like a soft knock you assume came from the pipes, or a whisper you blame on the wind. And the reason I'm telling you this right now is because every single story you're about to hear began with something that seemed harmless, something that could be ignored, something the person experiencing it convinced themselves wasn't important, until it followed them into their dreams, into their routines, and eventually into their sense of reality itself. And these aren't legends or internet creepy. These are real ghost stories from the United States. Stories that feel like horror movies because they unfold slowly, patiently, as if whatever was behind them understood that true fear doesn't rush, it waits. And the first story comes from a man named Daniel in rural Iowa, a quiet farming town where nothing ever happens, and that is exactly why it took him so long to realize something was wrong. Daniel inherited his family farmhouse after his father passed away, a property that had been in his family for generations, surrounded by endless cornfields that whispered when the wind passed through them at night. And during the day, the house felt normal, comforting even, but after sunset, something about it changed. The air felt heavier, the silence deeper, and the first sign came during harvest season when Daniel noticed his motion lights turning on every night at exactly las 12:17 Alto M, always at the same time, always facing the cornfield. And at first he assumed it was deer or raccoon, until he started checking the cameras and found nothing there. No movement, no animals, just the lights clicking on and off as if responding to something invisible. Night after night, until one evening Daniel stayed awake to watch it happen in real time, sitting in his truck with the engine off, heart pounding, staring at the edge of the field. And when the lights came on, he saw it, a tall black silhouette standing perfectly still between the rows of corn, not moving, not swaying with the wind, just watching the house. And the unsettling part wasn't just its presence. It was the way Daniel felt, noticed, like the thing in the field knew he was watching it back. And when he blinked, it was gone. No sound, no movement, just absence. After that night, Daniel started finding footprints near the field. Deep impressions in the soil that didn't match any boots he owned. And the smell came next. A damp, rotten odor like wet earth and rusted metal that lingered around the back door. Strongest just before dawn. And things escalated when Daniel woke up one night to the sound of footsteps on his porch. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped right outside his bedroom window. And when he looked out, there was nothing there, but the window was fogged from the outside, as if someone had been breathing against the glass. And etched into the condensation was a single word. Watching, Daniel moved out within a month, leaving the farmhouse empty. But locals say the motion lights still turn on every night at 2:17 a.m., even though no one lives there anymore. The second story takes us to Appalachia, deep in the mountains of West Virginia, where a woman named Rachel rented a small cabin while working remotely, looking for peace and isolation. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what she got. Quiet mornings, mist rolling through the trees, and nights so silent she could hear her own heartbeat. But one night while brushing her teeth, Rachel noticed something strange in the bathroom mirror. Her reflection lagged behind her movements by just a fraction of a second. So subtle she thought she imagined it, until it happened again and again. And then the dreams started. Dreams where she woke up inside the cabin and saw herself standing in the corner of the room, facing the wall, whispering something she couldn't hear. Rachel woke up every time drenched in sweat, heart racing, and always at the same time. 3:33 a.m. She began setting alarms and recording herself sleeping, desperate to prove it was just stress. But when she reviewed the footage, she saw herself sit up in bed at exactly 3:33, turn her head toward the corner, and smile at nothing, then whisper, "I know." The scariest part wasn't what she saw, it was what she didn't remember. Entire conversations she had no memory of, messages sent from her phone she didn't write, and one morning she woke up with mud on her feet and pine needles in her hair, as if she'd been outside, barefoot, in the middle of the night. The cabin owner later admitted previous renters had complained about the same thing, the feeling of being copied, mirrored, slowly replaced. Rachel left the mountains and says she still avoids mirrors at night. The third story comes from New Jersey, from a former night shift nurse named Olivia who worked in a small hospital built in the a place with long fluorescent-lit hallways and rooms that never felt truly empty. Olivia noticed that patients in one specific wing would often ask the same question right before passing away. They'd look at her shoulder and ask, "Who's that man?" Even when no one was there, she brushed it off as hallucinations until one night she saw him herself. A tall figure standing at the end of the hallway, wearing outdated hospital attire, face obscured by shadow, and when she blinked, it was closer over the next weeks. Olivia saw him more frequently, always right before patient coded, always watching. And one night she heard her name whispered over the intercom, called to a room that wasn't occupied, and she arrived. The lights flickered, and she felt a cold hand grip her wrist, and a voice whispered, "You see me now." Olivia quit the next day, but says she still sees him sometimes in reflective surfaces, especially when she's exhausted. The fourth story is from Texas, where a family moved into a suburban home outside Austin. Newly built, no tragic history, which made it harder to explain what started happening to their young daughter, Lily, who began talking to someone she called the Quiet Lady. Lily said the Quiet Lady stood in her closet at night and told her stories about living underground and being forgotten. The parents assumed imaginary friend behavior until Lily began describing things she shouldn't know, like the layout of the house before renovations, and the fact that someone had died on the land during construction, something the parents later confirmed was true. The Quiet Lady became less friendly over time, telling Lily she didn't like sharing, and one night the parents heard Lily arguing with someone in her room, shouting, "You can't have me." When they burst in, Lily was alone, but the closet door was open and the temperature inside was freezing. They moved shortly after, and Lily stopped talking about the Quiet Lady immediately. The fifth story comes from California's Central Valley, where a man named Miguel worked overnight at a warehouse, driving the same empty road home every night, until one night he noticed a woman standing on the shoulder of the road, waving for help. He slowed down but felt an overwhelming sense of dread and kept driving, only to see her again miles later, standing in the middle of the road, staring directly at him, her face blank, her body unnaturally still. Miguel swerved and nearly crashed, and when he checked his mirrors, she was gone. He later learned multiple fatal accidents had occurred on that stretch of road, and locals warned about a woman who appears to drivers who are too tired to stop. The sixth story takes place in Chicago, where a man named Aaron lived in a high-rise apartment and began hearing his upstairs neighbor dragging furniture every night, except the unit above him was vacant. He complained to management, who confirmed no one lived there, yet the sounds continued, always between 1 and 4 a.m. Aaron eventually went upstairs himself and found the door unlocked. Inside, the apartment was empty except for deep scratches in the hardwood floor, like something heavy had been dragged repeatedly across it, and in the dust, written over and over, were the words, "Still here." Aaron moved out within weeks. The seventh story comes from Oregon, where hikers reported seeing a child standing alone on forest trails, asking for help finding her parents, and those who followed her always lost time, hours passing without memory, and found themselves deeper in the woods than they should have been. One hiker recorded the encounter and later noticed the child never blinked, never cast a shadow, and vanished the moment he looked away. The eighth story comes from Florida, where a man named Kevin lived near the Everglades and began hearing splashing outside his house at night, as if someone was walking through the swamp. The sounds moved closer each night until one evening he heard wet footsteps inside his home, leaving puddles on the floor that led to his bedroom door. When he opened it, the room was empty, but the smell of stagnant water lingered for days. The ninth story is from Massachusetts, where a college student named Hannah lived in an old dorm and began receiving voicemail messages from her own number, recordings of her breathing, sleeping, and whispering, "Don't wake up." Messages time-stamped 4 times she was asleep. Campus police found nothing, but the calls stopped after she transferred schools. The 10th story comes from Nevada, where a motel clerk working the graveyard shift noticed a man standing in the parking lot every night at exactly las 4:12 alto m, staring at room 23. When the clerk finally approached him, the man vanished, and records showed a man died in room 23 years earlier at exactly that time. And the pattern continues across states, across decades, different people, different places, but the same slow escalation, the same moments of doubt, the same realization that something is aware of them, watching, waiting. And the most disturbing part isn't that these entities exist, It's that they seem to follow rules, appear at specific times, respond to attention, and retreat once acknowledged, as if they exist on the edge of perception, feeding on uncertainty. And if you're listening to this right now and something in your home feels slightly off, a sound you can't place, a shadow that doesn't quite match, remember that every one of these stories started with someone convincing themselves it was nothing. And if you don't want to ignore the signs, if you want to hear more real ghost stories that feel like horror movies, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves being scared. Because the more these stories are told, the harder it is for whatever's out there to stay hidden.